Hello and welcome to your World War I propaganda notes. Propaganda is information or ideas methodically, as in purposefully, spread by an organized group or government to influence people's opinions. During World War I, this was largely governments trying to convince people to support the war effort. This was done in all the major countries, the US, Great Britain, France, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia. All the major countries were doing this. We're going to focus in on the United States, and as we do so, we're going to look at different ways that propaganda was used. But first, let's take a look at a couple images. First, we see one on the left that says food will win the war. On the right, it says, gee, I wish I were a man, I'd join the Navy. And then the next one, it says, help crush the menace of the seas, buy Liberty bonds. And the other one says, be patriotic, sign your country's pledge to save food. Talking about propaganda, there's two things that we need to be aware of. There's the purpose and the technique. On your page, there's a matching section on propaganda techniques. On the left side, it says half-truth, patriotic appeal, emotional appeal, catchy slogans, evocative visual symbol, and demonization. What I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to pause, and I'd like for you to try and answer these on your own. Then we'll pick it up together. So as we're looking at propaganda techniques, these are things that people try to do to influence people. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one was half-truth. When we're talking about a half-truth, that's going to be letter D. That's where you're deceiving the viewer, only telling a part of the true story. And we'll take a look at some examples later. The next one, patriotic appeal. In this case, you're using patriotic language or symbols of national pride. For the US, you might show an American flag, a bald eagle, something like that. Next one, emotional appeal. That's letter B. You're playing to people's emotions, maybe fear, pride, or something like that. For catchy slogans, that's letter E. You're using memorable phrases to motivate the viewer to do something. We'll see some examples of that later. We've got evocative visual symbols. In that case, it's letter F, showing certain symbols that appeal to emotion. Children, flags, women, etc. Now keep in mind, as we list those, a lot of those evocative visual symbols are geared towards a specific audience. At this time, it's geared towards young men who are going to be going out and fighting. So we'll take a look at more at that later. Finally, demonization. In that case, that's letter A, showing the enemy as evil, murderous, less than human. Hope you did well. All right, now we're going to look at the purpose behind the propaganda. Here you see the 5 purposes of propaganda: recruitment of soldiers, financing the war effort, unifying the country behind the war effort, conservation of resources, and participation in home front organizations. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to look at each one of these, and you're going to write down the definition and see some examples. Here's our first one, recruitment of soldiers. Definition, getting more men to fight. On the left side, we see a poster, and down at the bottom it says enlist. That's encouraging people to sign up to fight in the war. On the right side, we see a wonderful opportunity for you, U.S. Navy. Again, trying to get more people involved. Second reason, financing the war effort. Definition, getting more money to pay for weapons, food, etc. War is expensive, and the government needs some help. On the left side, help Uncle Sam stamp out the Kaiser. The Kaiser's the leader of Germany. Buy U.S. government bonds. Bonds are where you loan the government money and they pay you back more money later on. On the right side, his Liberty bond, paid for in full. Our third one, unifying the country behind the war effort. Making sure American citizens agree with the war and work together. During a war, you really need to have everybody on the same side at home for it to be successful. So we see Wake Up America. Civilization calls every man, woman, and child. So it's calling everybody to work together. And on the right side it says Together We Win. And it shows people from 3 different occupations working together. Next, conservation of resources, saving food, fuel, and metals so that these can be used for the military. On the left side, save a loaf a week, help win the war. On the right side, meatless Mondays, wheatless Wednesdays, save for our army and allies. The idea being that if you're not eating as much, that's going to have more left over for the military. And finally, participation in home front organizations. This is encouraging all Americans to help with the war effort. On the left side, we have you a Red Cross service flag. And then also, there's a Red Cross recruitment on the other side. These are home front organizations that can help out the war effort. What we're going to do next is I want you to pause this, and there is another worksheet. And it looks like this. It says World War I propaganda at the top. It has the 5 purposes of propaganda on the left, and then the propaganda techniques on the right. And down below, there's about 8 different propaganda posters. I want you to look over these posters, and I want you to pause the video, and for each one, try and figure out what its purpose is and its technique. You're definitely going to have to reuse some of the purposes and techniques as you're going through. After you take some time and work on answering these, I'll go over the answers in this video. So we're going to pause now for a moment. So hopefully by now you've had a chance to go over each one of these, and we'll take a look at them one at a time. First, we have destroy this mad brute, enlist. Purpose, definitely recruitment of soldiers, looking at the idea of enlisting. The technique, demonization. We're trying to make the enemy look like King Kong here. Let's go on to the next one. It says his Liberty Bond paid for in full. Purpose, financing the war effort. That key word of bond. Anytime you see bond, it's going to be financing the war effort. Technique, this is emotional appeal. It's kind of playing with your emotions. Could also be evocative visual symbols, but I think emotional appeal's the best one here. Next, it says, have you a Red Cross service flag? First, purpose, participation in home front organizations, trying to get people involved. What technique is being used? This is an evocative visual symbol. It's showing a little kid who's putting the Red Cross service flag, probably looking out, wondering when is daddy going to come home. So it's really, really trying to play on your emotions by using visual symbols. Next, we have I want you for U.S. Army, nearest recruiting station. Purpose, definitely recruitment of soldiers. Technique, this is patriotic appeal. We've got Uncle Sam, U.S. flags, all sorts of stuff, really trying to get you involved. Next one, it says wake up America, civilization calls, every man, woman, and child. Purpose, unifying the country behind the war effort, especially this part down at the bottom. Every man, woman, and child. That's trying to get everybody to be unified. Technique, patriotic appeal. It says America at the top. The woman's got basically wearing an American flag here. Next one, save a loaf a week, help win the war. Purpose, conservation of resources. Technique, there's some patriotic appeal. In addition to that, I could definitely see this as a catchy slogan. I think you can make an argument for either one. Next, purpose. Sow the seeds of victory. Plant and raise your own vegetables. This is conservation of resources. If you're planting and raising your own vegetables, then the government can use others to feed the military. In technique, this is patriotic appeal. Look at her. She's wearing a U.S. flag. Anytime you see a lot of this U.S. flag stuff, it's definitely patriotic appeal. Finally, last one, it says loose lips sink ships. What's its purpose? unifying the country behind the war effort. In other words, don't tell secrets. Don't let um, people know what's going on. It could end up causing a ship to sink by giving information to the enemy. And the technique, catchy slogan. That's definitely a good example. Now, as we've gone through these, there's some overlap between them. Um, you'll often see more than one technique being used. Make sure that you can defend your reasonings as we go along.